Everybody who's picked up a Batman comic book or watched the Batman movie understands that one of his greatest talents is his ability to fight. This ability is constantly depicted as being so good that it's considered a superpower. And most recently, this has been turned into the Tibetan monks meme, poking fun at how Batman whips out these humanly impossible techniques and calls it martial arts. Batman has over 80 years of history, and in that time, his martial arts prowess has been expanded upon greatly. And it's gotten to the point where Batman is in the conversation for the greatest martial artist of all time. We are the Hive Mind, and in today's video, we're going to be discussing exactly why this argument is being presented. So for the casual audience, or the people who've been listening to other content creators, you may have read the title of this video and thought, how can Batman be the best ever? He's not even the best in his own verse. So firstly, we're going to be tackling why that is just objectively incorrect. Batman has always been the best fighter, martial artist, most skilled combatant, whatever you want to call him, he's always been number one. This is so ridiculously consistent that I can grab a statement from every era of DC and Batman is stated to be number one. The best statement you can receive is from a narrator or an omniscient source. These are commonly referred upon as word of God statements because they're not affected by a character's subjectivity. If we look at narrator statements or guidebook statements, as early as pre-Crisis on Infinite Earths, Batman is stated to be the world's most skilled combatant. After having skills described to be superhuman, Batman is acknowledged as the world's most skilled fighter, or within the Rebirth era, just being stated to have peerless fighting skills. In 2024, he was stated to have unmatched martial arts knowledge. The point is, DC goes out of their way to put Batman as number one in terms of fighting skills, and there's no other character that receives the same amount of credit and validity behind these statements. Common examples of characters people usually believe to be better than Batman because of their statements would be people like Lady Shiva. But when you look at these statements closer, they don't hold the same amount of validity as Batman's. For example, Lady Shiva is consistently said to have the title of the world's best fighter. But at every avenue, the validity behind this statement falls apart. In the 2004 guidebook, when she got the moniker of the world's best fighter, Nightwing receives a statement of having fighting skills second only to Batman, telling us that although Shiva is recognized as the best, Batman is still better. Or in Tom King's most recent piece of work, Black Canary Best of the Best, the two are fighting for the title of the world's best fighter, where Canary beats Shiva, but because Canary gives up, Shiva retains the title of the best. So already, we know that title's fraudulent. But on top of that, Black Canary admits inferiority to Cassandra Cain the same week this book releases, telling us that Black Canary isn't even in contention for the best. This title has been passed down to Cassandra Cain before, within 2004, which is what a lot of people use to try to say that Cassandra is actually the best. But in the same era in which this title was passed upon to Cassandra, she directly admits inferiority to Batman by calling his fighting ability irreplaceable, which is why when we look to in-character statements, which are obviously subjective to characters' interpretations, Batman still consistently reigns supreme as the best martial artist in DC. Staying on the topic of Lady Shiva, Jason Todd, somebody who was trained by Shiva and has even bested her before, refers to Batman as the best there ever will be. Take Ra's al Ghul, the leader of the League of Assassins, the greatest teachers of the combat arts in history, who he himself is a master of innumerable killing techniques, has stated that no amount of dedication, study, or talent has ever produced anybody like Batman. This is important because pretty much every prominent martial artist in DC was a League of Assassins member. I'm talking Lady Shiva, Bronze Tiger, Ghostmaker. Speaking of Bronze Tiger, he's another character who's just flat out called Batman the best. Other characters who aren't prominent martial artists within DC, such as the JLA villain Kronos, calls Batman the world's greatest warrior. Batman Who Laughs says that Batman has never had to fight anybody with all of his training and discipline, implying there hasn't been a fighter Batman has faced as good as himself. Arsenal calls Batman the best in the business. Superman has called him the greatest. Deathstroke has said he's fought the best, but Batman was better. Failsafe calls Batman the best. Some random calls Batman the best. You're not getting the point yet? In character, Batman's just recognized by pretty much everybody as the best, whereas other characters like Lady Shiva are known to be frauds. Now, of course, nobody actually cares about what somebody's stated to be unless they have some backing for it. Fortunately for us, Batman just does the best against everybody in fights. The reason being, Batman majority of the time is holding back himself, which he himself describes to require more skill than people who fight lethally. And depending on the encounter, majority of the time, there's another contextual factor that disadvantaged Batman even more. Let's start with Lady Shiva, because I'm sure that's who most people think is better than Bruce. From their very first encounter, Lady Shiva recognizes Batman as the best. In their second encounter, Batman recognizes them as martial arts equals. And then in the very long period of uncertainty within post-crisis, Batman didn't know if he could defeat her until 2003. Where he beats her. Shiva was subjected to Gorilla Grodd's mind control, which specifically changes her morality to uphold Grodd's wishes rather than him manually puppeteering her to do what he wants her to do. This is why characters like Wally West is able to talk and use his powers and maintain his personality whilst under Grodd's brainwashing. So when Batman defeats her, he is defeating this bloodlusted Lady Shiva whose entire goal is to take down Batman. Even if you want to dismiss this fight under brainwashing, so it's not counting. Fast forward to 2017, Batman has a verbatim statement of defeating Lady Shiva fairly. And just because I know somebody's gonna bring this fight up, if we look 2 issues prior, we would see Batman's shoulder was shot and injured, as well as Cass literally dying on the ground, distracting Batman, hence why Lady Shiva admits to using trickery within this bout. So no, Lady Shiva has never defeated Batman on screen, ever. Cass is in a similar boat to Lady Shiva, but not exactly. Just as she has never beaten Batman fairly, Batman has never defeated her. The inverse dilemma with them comes from this statement from 2017, where Batman says he would lose to Cass. However, we need to understand the circumstance of the scenario to properly interpret these statements. Batman never wants to fight his family, ever. This is shown 2 issues later when Batman has to fight Cassandra Cain in a real fight outside of training, and he refuses to throw a punch because he doesn't want to hurt his family, which is why he said he'd lose. In a scenario where he has to fight Cass, he would hold back too much, resulting in a loss, at least within his eyes in 2017. Because fast forward to 2023, Batman refers to himself as the best, acknowledging his requirement to fight the Bat family. So for whatever reason, if Batman did in fact think Cass was better than him in 2017, he no longer holds this stance, meaning any scaling for Cass over Batman gets completely thrown out the window. But if you need any further proof of Batman being above Cassandra, we look directly to their encounters against Thomas Wayne. Batman, whilst extremely mentally nerfed and physically weakened, fights dead relative to Thomas Wayne. However, Cass, on the other hand, with the help of 4 other Bat family members, gets absolutely obliterated. Karate Kid is the next prominent character that people like to assume is better than Bruce. Difference is, we actually have 2 different fights showcasing why Batman is better. Their first encounter is split between Justice League and Countdown, 2 separate comic books depicting the same fight. If you only read Countdown, it's easy to assume that Karate Kid was just better than Batman. But in Justice League, we learned that Batman was actually playing a ruse the whole time, purposefully taking damage in order to position himself in a way where Karate Kid wouldn't see Black Lightning coming. The reason for this is Batman is aware that Karate Kid is under brainwashing. He doesn't want to hurt him. So instead of beating him up, he just gets Black Lightning to knock him out. But if you still doubt this, in their next encounter, they are forced into a zero-gravity fight, where Batman has never done this before, opposed to Karate Kid, who is a master of the form. And after only 2 strikes landed on him, Batman adapts and fights directly on par with Karate Kid, showing that a disadvantaged Batman is equal to Karate Kid, just telling us Bruce is better. Now, I'm gonna quickly run through Slade, just because he scales to a lot of other martial artists, so Batman being above him is just substantiation for him being above everybody. Slade just admits that Batman would kill him if he wanted to. And DC themselves say that Slade is near equal to Batman. Now, there's a lot of people who like to cling to the 90s and early 2000s about why other characters are probably better than Batman, and a lot of people try to use their scaling and their statements from that time period and just say, yeah, they should still be better than Batman. But I love to be the bearer of bad news for you. All of that is over with. Connor Hawke was concretely a top 5 martial artist, if not top 3 in post-crisis. This same Connor Hawke, after getting a physicals amp, lost to Constantine Draken, like badly. Next time we see Draken, it's in 2021, where he tells us He lost to Batman. The point in me saying this is to tell you that all post-crisis scaling, when trying to apply it to current Batman, is all over with. It doesn't matter. Now, the final piece of inverse I'm going to go over is Nightwing, because Nightwing is regarded as number 2 within the verse. This is a notion that's been repeated since 2004 up until 2017. But when we look at their fights, we can understand that there is still at least a considerable gap between the two. Now, many of Nightwing's strongest soldiers like to push the Tom King power ranking, where he puts Nightwing and Cass above Bruce in terms of martial arts, which he decided to try and put on the paper when he wrote Nightwing issue 30, where Bruce and Nightwing fight each other, quote unquote, all out. There are quotes around all out because he didn't write it in the comic book. He told us in a podcast after the comic had already come out. Now, in this fight, it is very clear Batman is still holding back considerably, as he is trying to encourage Nightwing to be ready for the Spiral mission he has planned for him, stopping the fight when he believes Nightwing to be ready. Not because Nightwing fairly bested him in combat, but people who really want Nightwing to have gotten a fair win here like to ignore that context. The reason why Tom King holds no authority in this scenario is because his opinion doesn't supersede years of consistency with these characters, which is why I return to a statement I showed earlier in this video where Batman never wants to fight his family ever, telling us Batman wouldn't be going all out like Tom King thinks Batman would be in this instance. In fact, while fighting a future version of Nightwing, Batman tells us that for him to stand down would be impossible, directly telling us that Batman giving up was not because he lost the fight, because Batman standing down is impossible. Fast forward to 2022, Barbara Gordon says Dick was trained by the best ever. Another statement telling you Batman is number 1, making Dick now Bruce's equal, which could very well be true in a bloodlusted scenario where the two fight each other going all out. However, their fights after this statement was made don't really show this. Batman, whilst not trying to fight his family, needs to defeat Nightwing to get to the Batbox. After easily countering Nightwing and flooring him with only one punch, Batman walks away from Nightwing's extremely dazed body, showing us that Batman probably still has a slight battle IQ advantage, seeing as when they were both in a neutral position, Batman just made the right read and properly countered Nightwing. Many people like to use this fight to try to say Nightwing beats Batman because Nightwing technically ended off on a W here. However, those people like to ignore the fact that Nightwing blatantly off-guards Batman here, as Bruce has his hands tucked under his cape because he just got finished fighting Tim Drake, not prepared to engage in another fight with Nightwing, which is illustrated through these action lines showing surprise on Batman. Every other encounter the two have, there's blatant context which I shouldn't really need to explain to anybody. Batman being transformed into a werewolf would clearly restrict his fighting ability, as he can't apply his body in the same way he would normally, which we know is a detriment to Batman because he has a highly personalized fighting style, which would of course be personalized to Batman's physiology. Whoa, and would you look at that? Another statement implying Batman's the best fighter in DC. Finally, we have their current encounter, which for simplicity, I don't really have a reason to get into. Batman is just holding back here, and this is an alternate timeline Nightwing. So what you should have gotten from this section is that Nightwing is pretty relative to Batman, but consistently speaking, Bruce should still be slightly better. So now that the first half of the video is done and you all understand that Batman is the best in DC, understanding why Bruce is of the upper echelon of martial artists in fiction becomes very easy. Because any martial artist in DC who has a good feat, Batman just scales above this. And most of the time, it is a significant degree above that level. So let's just start with some of the basic quantifiable measures in a crossverse setting, which would just be martial knowledge. As I've already shown, Batman has unmatched martial arts knowledge, meaning most knowledgeable in DC. At a baseline, Batman is a master of all forms of combat located on Earth. Now, when we get into the more unknown styles and personalized styles, this is where scaling gets a little bit more confusing, however, still very easy to quantify because of this unmatched statement. For example, Karate Kid, who is a character from the 31st century and is a master of all martial arts up until that time, extending across his galaxy. Yet, Batman, who has unmatched martial arts, knows more than Karate Kid. This is because of Batman's ever-growing martial arts catalog. The same way characters like Lady Shiva, who have universal mastery of martial arts yet still learn new styles every year, Batman is constantly tweaking his fighting style and creating new techniques and styles, becoming so talented at this that he's able to do it on the fly to directly counter the enemies in which he is fighting. He has such a fundamental understanding of combat to where he's able to master forms of fighting that no other mortal would be able to. For example, the immortal Vandal Savage created an entire martial arts form that, to be honest, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce, in which is so complex that Batman originally deems it to be something only an immortal can master. However, in the current day, we understand that Batman learned that style and understood it so well that he was able to incorporate it into his own personal fighting style, going to show that when it comes to battle IQ, there are very few characters who can contend Batman's understanding of fighting. Digging a little deeper into the battle IQ aspect, not only does Batman understand his own way of fighting so well, he can use that and apply it into understanding your fighting style, to the point where he's able to accurately predict what you are going to do before you do it. Even something as simple as a fighting stance tells Batman everything he needs to know to accurately predict everything you are going to do within that fight. This strong understanding of fighting extends to his instincts, as Batman no longer requires to actively think about what he is going to be doing in fights. It has become well beyond instinct for him. In fact, it just becomes first nature, which in a nutshell is just Ultra Instinct on steroids. Obviously, Batman would need to apply this skill somehow, and he shows a great ability to do so whenever he fights skilled opponents. The trademark ability of the mercenary Taskmaster from Marvel Comics is to recognize your fighting style and copy it himself. This is something Batman has consistently been able to do, where from just seeing your technique or your fighting style, Batman is able to perfectly emulate it and even expand upon it in some instances. For example, Lady Shiva's leopard blow was something Bruce had only seen one time prior, and he immediately found a way to make it better by turning it non-lethal. In fact, Batman's adaptation is so strong that people who have every advantage against Bruce, who should beat him, struggle. For example, Prometheus, who had the skills of the 30 top martial artists within DC, including Batman himself, got absolutely violated by Bruce. Characters with the ability to slow their perception down to a standstill whilst having the knowledge of Batman's fighting style still are unable to best him in combat. Straight up telepaths who can read your mind struggle in combat against Batman. Even Midnighter, a character whose battle computer built into his brain, who feeds him every single possible scenario within a fight, underperforms Batman against the same opponents and seemingly agrees with the notion that he couldn't beat Batman in a fight. Even common techniques to predict your opponent's fighting style, such as reading body tells, are very hard to pull off against Bruce. Batman has perfect control of his body. Things as complex as the nervous system and even internal temperature are completely controlled by Batman, meaning you won't see any tells on Batman's body unless he wants you to. This, in combination with the fact that Batman makes up techniques as he fights, his style is practically unpredictable. Whereas Batman, on the other hand, due to the reasons explained prior, just has a sixth sense for danger. Any possible threat to Batman can easily be detected, whether that be air currents, muscle twitches, tells in your fighting style. Batman's sixth sense will pick up on it and he'll either be able to exploit it or defend against it. And because of that, Batman is genuinely just a stat stomper. People who have large stat advantages against Batman still lose just because Bruce is that much more skilled. For example, Solomon Grundy, a character who has been boxing with Superman and Shazam since his inception, consistently struggles with Bruce in hand-to-hand combat. Even characters as strong and as fast as Kingdom Come's Supergirl get immediately annihilated by Batman's technique. And this is a very consistent trait within Batman's character. Whether it be people with small stat advantages like Bane, or characters with very large gaps like Damage, Gladiator, or even Wonder Woman, Batman has shown to be able to contend. Now, quickly, I'm just gonna go over some miscellaneous stuff regarding Batman's skill, as these things are important to note, but don't necessarily fall into a specific category. For example, Batman's martial arts isn't limited to just what's on Earth. I kind of implied that when I spoke about Karate Kid, but I didn't really go into detail. Batman has went to space before, and when he did, he had picked up some new martial arts from aliens, quite literally learning all the fighting styles of every alien cataloged in this robot that is specifically designed for training combat. So Batman deadass has alien martial arts in his pocket, such as the Kryptonian martial arts technique that I showed earlier in the Supergirl feat. Some lower tier martial arts scaling, but still pretty good, would be how much above Batman is in comparison to League of Assassins members. This is noteworthy because every one of the fodder League of Assassins members is a master of all martial arts, yet every single time they fight Batman in large numbers, they get absolutely violated. It is explicitly stated by Talia al Ghul that not even 1,000 of them can beat Batman. Even when physically amped to a superhuman degree, Batman in a suit and tie, not trying very hard, takes out multiple of them, just going to show how much above Batman is in comparison to other martial artists. Now, I hope by now I've beat out any doubt in your mind that Batman isn't a top tier martial artist, especially to the people who think he has losing matchups against most cross-verse opponents. There are maybe 10 martial artists in fiction, and I'm being generous, that beat Batman clear cut, and I hope this video has shed some light onto why that is. Thank you for watching till the end of the video. If you can do me a favor and like the video and hype it so it gets pushed in the algorithm, along with subscribing to the channel if you enjoy power scaling, versus battle, or just breakdown videos like this one, that would be greatly appreciated. That's all for today, and I'll see you guys next week in our next video.